of the Bronx and all the people who have joined us. My name is Gary Axelbank. I am the host of Bronx Talk and the Bronx Buzz on BronxNet television. I will be the moderator for the proceedings today, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Bronx Bronx City Council Education Forum. A number of people have gotten together to organize this event. It is organized by the Bronx Parent Leaders Advocacy Group in collaboration with CECs 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, which means the entire borough of the Bronx. Also, the New Settlement Parent Action Committee, the African Democratic Club, the STEMDUP Institute, and BronxNet Television. Also, we need to thank right at the top these parent leaders representing the Community Education Councils, commonly known as the CECs. From CEC 7, the president is Hakeem Yamadi. From CEC 8, the president and lead coordinator of the BXPLAG Parent Candidate Forum is Farah Despains. And I want to give a specific shout out to Ms. Despains because she has worked tirelessly on all aspects of this to make sure we had a good program. Aida Zainos from CEC 9, she's the president there. Maria Villalobos from CEC 10 is the vice president. From CEC 11, Cheryl Smith is the president. Ilka Rios at CEC 12 is the president. And Amy Tsai will be representing District 75. Benga Suber represents the African Democratic Club. Grizel Cardona represents the New Settlement Parent Action Committee. And Sheikh Musa Drama represents the STEMDUP Institute. And the co-founder of the Bronx Parent Leaders Advocacy Group is Tom Shepard. Considering the number of candidates running in the Bronx, and we just did the tally, there are 49 of them. The committee worked as hard as they could to invite as many as we could fit into this program. The candidates appearing on tonight's program were those who responded first. I think that makes sense. There is a lot of talk about maybe doing an additional one, but nobody can confirm plans for that. If possible, we will make that happen. The idea in the Bronx and in everything we do is inclusion. So we'll see what we can do. The bottom line is tonight it's about education. Education of Bronx children, of course, but also educating the general public about who the candidates are. But I have to say it's also about educating the candidates about who Bronx people are and how compassionate and passionate they are about our children. And the quote that I picked out of their literature is they want to improve education in the Bronx and begin creating the type of synergy around education in the borough that could uplift us all in the name of diversity, inclusion, equity, and excellence. I don't think I could have said it better than that. We have 16 candidates with us tonight from a variety of the city council districts. They'll all be on the ballot in the June 22nd Democratic primary. What we've done with the 16, we've split them into two 1-hour segments. So we will be joined by these candidates in our first hour. Running in City Council District 16, it is Amadou Diallo. Mr. Diallo, thank you for joining us. Also, Yves Phileas. Mr. Phileas, thank you for joining us. Althea Stevens, thank you for joining us. Then running in City Council District 17, it is Helen Hines. Thank you for joining us. Running in City Council District 18, it is Michael Belzer, Darlene Jackson, Eliu Lara, and William Rivera. Candidates will rotate the order throughout the program. Each candidate will be able to respond 1 minute to each one of the questions, and you will receive audio warnings at 30 and 15 from me. And that way you'll know when your time will be up. Closing statements will be limited to 1 minute. We'll do that at the end of the hour. And please note, everybody, all questions that are used in tonight's program have been submitted by the Bronx parent leaders. The way that we will handle this, since there are candidates from similar council districts, we will introduce them and go in the order of each district one at a time, and then we'll rotate them through the program. So we'll start out with Council District 16, the candidates who are here, who are running in that. The first respondent will be Amadou Diallo. So, Mr. Diallo, let's start with you, and this is our first question. To put it bluntly, class sizes are too big, especially now when children need as much individual and academic and emotional care as possible. There are existing abandoned buildings that can be converted to school space, and also, of course, a great desire in many Bronx communities for new school facilities that simply never get built. Also, there's a great need for repairing, updating, and modernizing existing ones with new furniture, Wi-Fi capacity, electrical capacity, AC and ventilation improvements. And there was one example pointed up to us that the scaffolding at the Morris High School campus in Council District 16 has been there for decades, and repairs have still not been done. Having said all that, if you're elected to the city council, and this goes to you, Mr. Diallo, how would you address these kinds of very difficult issues? So that is for you, Mr. Diallo.
First of all, good afternoon. Thank the Bronx Parent Advocacy Group for organizing this debate. And thank you, Mr. Gary, for moderating it. The question, if you can repeat the question, because I was actually, my volume was too low.
All right. So I'm going to just summarize it very quickly, okay, rather than repeat the whole thing. Basically, it's about school facilities. The buildings are not repaired. There are some buildings that they say they're going to build and they never get built. At Morris High School, there's scaffolding that's been there and no repairs have ever been made. It's a myriad of structural issues. How would you solve them?
Well, first of all, I think since most schools are controlled by the state government, if we have more of the city control in terms of having mayoral control, that will give the city council members an opportunity to increase funding. But what I will do if I'm elected is to work with parents, work with educators, to make sure schools, city construction, make sure new schools are constructed. Those that need to be renovated, they are renovated. So that would be my main focus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yves Filius, Mr. Filius, you get the next respondent for that question.
Well, thank you again, Gary. Thank you for all my colleagues that are here today, that we are here for the betterment of our borough, which is near and dear to my heart. So to answer your question, I believe in retrofying our community. That means retrofying is retrofitting our infrastructure while rectifying all the past ills that has been imposed on us as people from our community. We are lacking behind in terms of not just infrastructure, but in education. In order for us to be at the same format with our other respective boroughs, we first have to fix the infrastructure. We have to go green. We have our health and air quality, but that is the goal. Retrofying means, retrofitting our infrastructure while rectifying all the past ills in the past.
Thank you very much. The third candidate in District 16 is Althea Stevens. Ms. Stevens, what do you think?
I'm always talking on mute. That's my new thing. But hello, everyone. And hello to all of my colleagues and everyone who's here tonight. But one of the things that I think is really important is to think about making sure that I'm working with our state electeds to, we know that the schools got fully funded, to make sure we're working with them and they're being allocated where it needs to be. And specifically in District 16, we do have a school that is allotted to be built into the district. And so my focus would also be to make sure that those things, that school is built, in addition to looking at the schools that we already have and how do we make sure that those infrastructures are updated, because like the question said, a lot of our schools are not updated, they're not Wi-Fi accessible, and those things also need to be addressed as well. So working with my state and federal local electeds to make sure that we are prioritizing our schools and making sure like things like the Morris Heights High School, getting that scaffolding down and getting the repairs that needs to get done adequately and quickly.
Thank you very much. Let's move to Council District 17. Ms. Hines, your thoughts on the same question. Do we have Ms. Hines? I didn't hear her yet.
Sorry about that, I was muted.
There we go. Go ahead.
My thoughts on that is one of the things that we have to do is work together as colleagues to make sure that we cross through all of the elects and pull the money together to make sure that our schools are safe for the kids and the parents that visit the school every day. The infrastructure is a nightmare that we need to look into, but it can't take one pool of money. We have to pull together, we have to work together for the betterment of our children.
Thank you very much. Let's talk to Darlene Jackson about the same question. Ms. Jackson?
So I would have to say that there's a lot of red tape bureaucracies at the city council level. I know spending a lot of time at public hearings. I think there needs to be a little more oversight when it comes to meeting with the Department of Buildings and working with other city council members. As I have to agree with Althea, it does working with our state and federal elected officials, because as far as the money, it does exist, but it's about making sure that the money is allocated where it's
30 seconds.
invested in infrastructure and making sure that it's safe and a healthy environment for our young people, and then making sure they're working efficiently.
Let's move ahead to Mr. Rivera. He's also running in District 18. Mr. Rivera, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone. Pretty much, I think we're all on the same page on this. As a district manager for 6 years, engaging with parents and engaging with some of the people on this panel here, we need to have a more transparent budget, funding process, an in-depth analysis of all the schools in my district and hopefully all the districts and all the school districts in the Bronx to see what schools need to be prioritized in terms of budget priorities and their visions. In terms of programming, the School Construction Authority is an agency that needs to be very looked at. I know that when Richie Torres was the chair of the, I believe, Investigations Committee, there were some discrepancies found there. It's very expensive to do certain projects. They're very slow. It is a disservice to the taxpayers. We just need to have a comprehensive report.
Thank you. Let's move to the next question.
Do I get to go?
Who is that?
Michael Belzer, District 18.
I'm so sorry, Michael. We just simply went past you. Thank you for bringing it up.
It's okay.
You'll forgive me. I've known you for a long time. You know, I wouldn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, no, I know. No worries.
Thank you for pulling it out.
Yeah, no worries. So when I worked at the Comptroller's Office, the School Construction Authority kind of lives in its own world. It has a bonding authority to issue bonds, and it's kind of unaccountable. So I would pressure the Comptroller's Office to do a complete and thorough audit of the School Construction Authority. In terms of getting more funds for the schools, we can do through comprehensive community-based planning, pull in some capital dollars that way. We need to empower the CECs to have more than just 5 issues that they're allowed to put on their priority list, and sync that up with the community board capital needs statements. So we can have synergy. So when we do call for advocating, we already know we have it on our district needs statement. We have the CECs calling for it. And, you know, being an elected official and having capital funds could also further put it behind it, and also looking at taxing multinational corporations that are in the community to get some funds for the school as well.
Thank you. I guess the next question is going to be to how to get the moderator to not skip over any candidates, but we'll figure that out probably by the next question. But this next question, we'll start off with you, Mr. Filius. Let's talk about trauma in the Bronx and for our children. Unfortunately, Bronx students and their families have been disproportionately affected by trauma from so many sources, and even more so during this pandemic. The DOE has initiated family and community wellness collectives to address the trauma that Bronx children and their families have been going through, especially in underserved communities. There's a great need for healing spaces and resources for all children and support for their families, especially in places where trauma was often pervasive even before the pandemic. How can you address these kinds of issues? And again, that is for you, Mr. Filius, to get us started.
Well, thank you for that question. I am a little bit familiar. Well, first, I would like to also answer one question or one comment. I am not a father, and I do not want to come here and speak as if I am a father, but I am a child of first generation American here in District 16 that whose parents' voices sometimes fell short of being listened to and heard to in our community. So I'm just here as an ear, and more importantly, as an elected, I would
30
love to
seconds.
push more social services within our school district, which is extremely important. Having collaboration with the Department of Mental Health is key and ideal. Finding a way to have more than one social worker per 30 children. It should be 2 social workers for every
15 seconds.
for every 30 children, more importantly, to just engage and have more students and parent days together. Well, parents just to come in, it shouldn't just be a parent day out, but it should be a parent week of understanding what a child
Time is up, sir. Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Stevens, you will get the next chance to answer that question.
I'm always talking on mute. I told you that's my thing. I'm gonna do it all the time, watch. But so, making sure that, for me, I've been in schools my entire career. And one of the things that I think that is really important is, looking at the one-to-one model. A lot of times schools that have CBOs in there, they typically have students who have advisors or counselors, and having that one-to-one model. I think that that's gonna be something that's really important. So young people can have a point person in the school building to make sure that if they're having a bad day, they need to talk, and have someone who's also going to look for them is really important. It's something that we need to make sure that we have throughout all schools and not just some schools. The other thing I think we also
30 seconds.
Okay. The other thing for me, I think is really important around trauma is not just focusing on in the school day, right? What other programs are in our community that can come in, support our kids? What after school programs do we have? And really looking at, addressing trauma with our people, our young people, in a holistic way, and also having wraparound services that's not only available to the young people, but also to the family members, because you can't just fix the child and not the family. So looking at wraparound services for the family.
Thank you. Ms. Hines, this question is for you now.
I think you skipped Diallo.
No, we're rotating. So since he was first last time, he's going to be last this time. So we will get to him. But let's go to Ms. Hines. Thank you for pointing that out.
Just trying to help you.
I appreciate it.
In regard to the trauma in the schools, the trauma is just not in the school setting. The trauma is before and after school setting. So including in the school setting, there need to be more social workers in order to provide for the students, because our children may speak to the social worker better or confidentially to the social workers away from the parents. So let's bear in mind that for our children, we need to give them the resource and the programs before school and after school. And in order for our children to advocate as to what's going on in their lives, there needs to be social worker assistant as well, their age, that someone that they can look up to. In terms of the trauma in the school, I don't understand why we don't allow the parents to have more hands-on and have the parents at the table to say what the school's needs are. The real needs should come from the parents.
Time. Thank you very much. And you, Mr. Belzer, your turn.
Yes, so this issue is near and dear to me. I went to a Long Island school, which was properly resourced, and I was able to have a school psychologist speak with me when, I was having issues at home. I think we need to do things like include washer and dryers in every school, in the community school model, expand that, because that would have helped me greatly when I was a child. We definitely need to pull in more money for our social workers, wraparound services, like Ms. Stevens said. But the way that we get funding for that is by defunding the NYPD and putting some more money towards social services, mental health services, and things like that.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Yeah, so I actually worked as an advocate counselor within a CBO in the public school system. And so the first thing that I did see is the host of issues that young people came with once they entered the school building, which is normally happens at home that trickles out into the community. So we definitely need to make sure that we have trauma-informed services, making sure that everybody is trained in restorative practices from the top down, and making sure that the money is really allocated in school nurses, school counselors, and I have to agree with Michael Belcher as far as divesting from, punitive systems and, training those school safety agents into like mental health
30
services
seconds.
to address the underlying issues of poverty and social inequality that's happening in the communities that's trickling to our school system.
Thank you. Let's move to you, Mr. Rivera. You get a chance to answer this question. Do we have Mr. Rivera?
Maybe you could, I'm sorry, I was unmuted. There needs to be more engagement with the DOE and the community. They're one of the agencies in our office that does not engage the way they should do with other agencies. The CEC does a great job, and like Michael says, they need to be empowered. I'm reading the chat here, and the parents feel ignored. I know there was a PIP parent involvement program that looks like the DOE has shelved that we need to bring back. And like I said before, the Department of Education wastes a lot of money. Comptroller came to speak in our community board meeting. He mentioned that they always find that DOE wastes is probably one of the agencies that wastes most of the most money. This is Scott Stringer. So yes, that's a disservice to the taxpayers. And I think when we restructure the funding in the DOE, we could fund a lot of the programs and a lot of initiatives that everyone in the panel is talking about and all the great ideas that I'm hearing.
15. Thank you. Mr. Diallo, you get the final word on this question.
Thank you, Gary. And first of all, I think I would like to agree mainly with Althea on discussion, but I will also add that we need to get more parents involved when it comes to mental health, because it's an issue that deals with parents. And sometimes in schools, if we increase more supervisors and we have more counselors that can deal with students directly, that can really be more helpful to help this issue. It's an issue that I believe is affecting mainly the immigrant community, and we got so much complaint on this kind of issue. So I would like schools to work more with parents. If I'm in that position, that's what I will encourage more.
Thank you. The next question, the first respondent will be you, Ms. Stevens. There's been a real problem of inclusion in Bronx schools. Parents of differing languages and or cultural barriers have had difficulty communicating with the school system, and they become disengaged, and ultimately their children suffer. How can you help address this and bring additional resources into the schools to supplement the funding that comes out of the state and the city? Ms. Stevens, for you.
Well, I think one of the major issues is a lot of our schools are not reflective of the community. So one, we need to start by hiring people who are from the community, who look like us, and also who speak the languages, right? So if we have communities that are high concentrations of specific immigrant communities, we should be targeting and doing very targeted outreach to those communities to work in those schools. It is important that we have, our community reflects who we're serving. So I think that that's one of the #1 things that we need to start, having schools reflect the community that they're in. And I think also too with that, we have to look at, I think everyone's been talking about the DOE wastes a lot of money. And so for us and city council coming in, it's important that we're looking at the budget very stringently to make sure that money isn't being wasted and reallocating. I say this all the time, there's always money in the budget. We just got to figure out where it's at. And there's a lot of waste that goes on. So for me, it's about having a school that is reflective of the community,
15.
Making sure that we're hiring parents from the community members to be teachers, paras, or whatever else we need in the school building, and being reflective of what we look like.
Thank you. Ms. Hines, same question for you. Let's talk about inclusion and keeping every child and family involved.
I can't express enough how important it is to have the parents that knows their child, knows the other children in the school, so that they can have firsthand dip on what goes on and who should be in the school teaching their children every day. Our children are very dear to our heart. And what we need to do is to reflect, unite, so that we can be better, have not as much inclusion, but we can have better equality for our kids.
30 seconds.
And if we did that, we would be in a better position for our children.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to you, Mr. Belzer. Let's talk about inclusion and cultural differences and how to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, so there definitely needs to be a hyper focus on language justice within our schools. So like Ms. Stevens said, making sure that we're hiring from the different communities that are represented in the schools. In terms of engagement, you know, we have to look at all the different organizations that are already doing work within the schools, empower them. Also make sure that people know, the parents know what kind of governance they can have in the school and what kind of roles they can play. I was proud to start something called Take Our Community Back to School event, where the parents not only didn't just get a backpack and school supplies, they actually learned how to get more involved in the school through the SLTs, through the CECs, through the PEP, and different ways to volunteer in the school community. And that's what we should continue to do.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, also from District 18.
I'm so sorry, Gary, can you just please repeat the question?
Sure. We're talking about cultural differences and language differences that make it difficult for some of the families to communicate with the school, and then they become disengaged. So how do we kind of change that dynamic so that every child and every family has equal opportunity to participate in their child's education?
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I think the City Council needs to work on is having a more robust outreach and making sure that information is reaching the hands of families, and also making sure that they have access to multi languages, to making sure that people feel welcome and engaged in the schools and a child's education. I also feel that that needs to be reflective about, you know, the people who work at the school needs to be very connected to the demographics of students who they work with, and understand the underlying issues that they come with, to be able to address their individual needs. And I feel that it definitely needs to be a robust as far as outreach to engage more people, and parents to feel more listened and be a part of the decision-making process, and be in leadership roles. It's good to have a seat at the table, but it has to be equally met with in leadership roles, so they can feel that they are part of any decision-making process that comes forth within the school system. Just so I want to make sure that I amplify this question in the chat box. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. The chat box, for people who don't know, is open, and there seems to be a very fertile discussion going on there, in addition to the one we're having here. But the next respondent will be you in the 18th Council District, Mr. Rivera. Everybody, let's remember to unmute ourselves.
Thank you, Gary. I was told that the DOE has outlined a diversity plan for each of the school districts, independent school diversity adversary group, where community leaders and educators and parents and students could reshape city policy on resource allocation. I really would like to know how this is working. I know 100 schools and programs are participating this year. And if that's something that the City Council needs to expand, and that initiative, that's something I would really like to look into.
Thank you. Mr. Diallo, your thought.
Thank you very much. First of all, as a parent that have so many students and also as a community leader, that the language access is something that really needed, and we need to hire more teachers from those immigrant communities, because for one instance, in our community, we might have so many issues, especially something, even if they got translated from the Board of Ed, but they might have someone from Senegal translating for a person who comes from Guinea. They might come from the same ethnic group, but the language might be different. So I support the idea to create more, access to language access, to make sure students and parents and along with teachers work together to expand this process. That will make education more affordable and much more better for the immigrant community. Thank you.
Mr. Diallo, thank you. And let's get the final word on this question for Mr. Filius.
Thank you. So this question actually is something that I can relate to. I grew up again, first generation. I understand the importance of English as second language. My parents, when I first started school, did not speak great English, and I remember translating for them. And one important thing that was near and dear to my heart that changed and transfixed my family's lives was watching Learn to Read on PBS daily. So I would love, as a council, to put funding into not just our schools and to have ESL centers within our schools to focus on the majority of the other languages that are spoken outside of English or Spanish within our district, but more importantly, the other languages, and partnering up with our public access channels to provide a learn English hourly weekly. That's would be my goal.
Thank you. The next question, the first respondent will be you, Ms. Hines, and all the candidates. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's talk about the digital divide. The pandemic has shed light on a digital divide that has had a disproportionately negative impact on students and families here in the Bronx. This has been reported all over the place. Everybody knows it's going on. Many have been at a decided disadvantage when it comes to remote learning. How can we ensure that each school and each home is technologically rich and each child has a device and broadband access so that there is equitability in educational access and opportunity? Ms. Hines?
Well, that's a problem because in viewing what I know of and the experience that I encounter in districts when parents didn't have access to just to get the iPads that they were giving out. It was very difficult for parents to look out for their children. I remember on many occasions calling downtown to the Board of Education, seeking an opportunity, going online and filling out the form with the parents so that they can get the iPads. The infrastructure of the schools are very bad, as we know, and we have to bring them up to speed. We have to, again, I say, get the parents at the table. So let's talk about what the problems are and resolve the problem based on priorities, because many schools need are different. But if we get the parents at the table, then we can talk about what the needs are, and then we can go across board of the elected officials to gain the money to get what we need done, including the capital funding.
Thank you. Mr. Belzer, digital divide.
So we need to directly address the digital divide. What that means is we need public internet in New York City. Public internet needs to happen because we need to get to our schools, we need to get to our jobs, we need to get to our medical appointments, and we need to connect with our community. And that should be a right in New York City. And in terms of getting devices into the hands of the children, we just won the money from the campaign for fiscal equity. So I think one of the first places that money should be spent is on a device for every student.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Yes, so I would have to agree with Michael. There's free hotspots and that's happening right here now in Harlem, and I think we can expand that out here to the Bronx and making sure that our night developments, our families as in family shelters, young people that's at most at risk have free internet access. Not only to have computers in their hands, but have the portable Wi-Fi as well, but also the knowledge to actually use it. Because a lot of the families that I've worked with the pandemic, they didn't know how to use the equipment. They didn't know how to use the equipment. Then there was a language barrier. And so I feel like if we have 21st century schools that already has equipped with the computers and it's part of the curriculum, these young people will be more equipped to utilize this remote learning at home along, and even educate their parents as well, offer them a computer class on the weekends. I think we need to is doing a thorough assessment at each home to making sure they meet the individual needs.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, what do you think?
Gary,
yeah, you're good.
I'm just make sure I'm unmuted. Gary, I think there was a technology divide before the pandemic, and this has really exacerbated the situation. Before the pandemic, Doing my rounds in the school, I noticed there was a lack of technology. Some of the computer labs are old. Speaking to the technology teachers, there wasn't adequate internet. I echo the response of the other candidates. There should be free Wi-Fi in New York City. This is something that's been talked about in numerous mayor and city debates and city council debates, and hopefully we could get it done in New York City. When I travel to other cities and I see that there are other countries and other places around the world that have free internet for their society,
30 seconds.
Why don't we have it here? Again, it's very expensive for some of these projects. Funding these projects together with our council member's office and putting them in our budget priorities is something that we document, but a lot of times there's not enough funding or it's just too expensive. And I think we need to make that cheaper.
15.
Yes. We need to upgrade all the technology in our school, and that will be in a report that I would love to do if I was council member.
Thank you. Mr. Diallo.
Yes, first and foremost, I will support the idea to have a free broadband internet access throughout the city for all the household. That will make it much more easier, for that access. And secondly, to create a tech board of education that can work with the tech industry companies to make sure they not only we have a free internet access, but we have a higher speed. Because sometimes when you come in a household, especially when the remote learning, looking at my own children, sometimes the internet is very slow. So it makes them slow for them to take their exam or participate in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phileas.
Thank you for the question. I believe in public-private partnerships, engaging with our cable providers to provide hotspots for every child within the district. And I do agree with Mr. Belzer, we should have free Wi-Fi, especially for our children. And if that means, every child within a school system gets a free Wi-Fi access while they're in school, that would be a goal and a push for me. This is extremely important. My community has always been behind.
30 seconds.
This isn't the first time we're behind in our schools, but just to piggyback on Mr. Rivera's comment, we need to, again, retrofit our infrastructure, right? We have to build what is currently our home, and making sure that, the schools have the right equipment, the right Wi-Fi, the right speed for our children to have. So once they leave the school and we provide them with a Wi-Fi and a laptop, that they can be just as well versed to be at home to succeed.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, you will get the final word on this question.
Thank you. And so I agree with a lot of the things that have been said as far as like we need free broadband and we have to make sure those things are accessible. But I think this is also just very connected to the question, the first question that we had around infrastructure, right? We have to look at how do we update our schools so that they can also be technology savvy. And then also, I think Ms. Jackson had said it around making sure that we are educating the parents as well. I think sometimes we get lost in the sauce where it's like we can't do everything at once, but we really can. Like, there were a lot of parents who struggled in the beginning because they had to learn while their kids were learning. So I think also offering programs to parents and so that they can also be brought up. And also when we're thinking about getting young people technology, we need to think about making sure that the parents have technology as well. So what does that look like? And, I think Mr. Phillips said it, having public and private partnerships to make sure that those things can happen and push it really forward.
Thank you. All right. But one thing I want to say before we begin the next question, our timekeeper, which I neglected to mention at the beginning, is Amy Tsai. And I really appreciate Amy's great work. She's feverishly on that stopwatch, making sure we're staying on time. Let's do the next round, and that will be Michael Belzer will get the first crack at this question. School co-locations, mergers, and closures are very problematic in the borough of the Bronx, partly because the timelines for changes in school utilization happen on compressed timelines with little or no input from parents until after a change has been approved by the Panel for Educational Policy. As a result, school communities are left to develop plans on their own without community input. Can you commit to making sure that your appointees on the PEP and the CECs are more aligned with the parents that they represent so that their voices in governance can have real meaning? Mr. Belzer?
Well, I believe this question might have been for borough presidents, because I don't believe we get appointees on the CEC or the PEP. But what I can commit to is making sure that our parents are organized, and supporting and giving resources to parent groups that exist, making sure that we're getting equitable funding for things like our parent association, so they can step up to the plate and apply pressure for the CECs to make sure that they're getting the information as quickly as possible, so they can get the parents involved, and then make sure that the plans are going through in coordination with the community. But I am against co-locating schools with charter schools, and I believe that we need to be going to the from the micro school model to a more holistic model.
Thank you. Let's pursue this question with Ms. Jackson. And yes, actually, Mr. Belzer is correct. So let's just alter it and talk about co-locations of schools. And if there are co-locations in your district, as Mr. Belzer said, with charter schools and public schools, how do we sort those out and make sure that every school has appropriate resources? That's Ms. Jackson. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of having co-located schools, like having like 5 schools in one building. I think we need to really focus on community schools, small size schools where you have 2 teachers in a classroom. I think that making sure that's adequate as far as the student-teacher ratio. I think that as far as like involving with parent as part of the decision-making process, I think we have to really work closely with the superintendent's office and making sure that these CECs and the PTAs have the data and transparent about, you know, what is the evaluation of services, so they can make proper modifications, and making sure that the parents and the students, because the students have a voice in this
15
too,
seconds.
and making sure that they are part of the decision-making process. This is their education, so there's no nothing could be put forth without their voice being included in it. And so I think there needs to be more cut. Like it's too much red tape. It's just entirely too much red tape.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rivera, let's talk about co-locations and the difficulties of schools getting along, sharing resources, and those kinds of issues.
I'm totally against co-locations. We have some in our council district 18 that I visited. It's not fair when you have a floor or a space in the school that's brand new and new computers and new floors and new amenities, and the same students who live in the same area don't have access to the amenities. It's not fair. I think that question is for Borough President, but I would support the CEC when anything that they would need. There are a lot of parents who are involved that need to be heard. There are a lot of responsible parents who donate a lot of time into their child's education and to the schools in their district that we need to hear more. And also, I don't know, when I went to school, Stevenson High School had 1 principal and 1 administrative staff. I don't know where we're going to with this Bloomberg initiative where we have several principals and several administrators running a school, having all different schools. I'm sure they're doing great work, but I think that's not efficient, and we need to take a look at that. How we can spend that money better.
Thank you. Mr. Diallo?
Yes, I am in favor of appointee, but as to co-location, I am not actually in favor of the co-location. I think school should be separated, like give them more, chance to learn, because I have schools in public schools, and I also have seen students that go to public school and students that go to charter school. And I see the differences when they're all in the same school. Sometimes it create, different animosity. So I do believe there will be separation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Filius, your response to this question.
I do not agree in co-location. There are 2 major campuses within the 16th district that houses more than 2 to 3 to 4 schools. That's the Taft campus, as well as the Morris High School campus. And I remember working in the assembly in the Taft campus had a school that was less than 2 years on creating something that's beneficial to our children does not mean that it will work in our community.
30 seconds.
I strongly feel that our parents have the voice. First off, the parents have the right to choose which schools their sources to have to be provided or to be afforded the luxury to choose which schools their children should attend. So of course I stand behind my parents. I'll make sure that the CEC is reflective of, and our parent teachers organizations are reflective of our community.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Yeah, so I don't like co-located schools. And I think Mr. Rivera said something that I agree with. When we were growing up, a lot of our schools have one principal, or one administrative, one assistant principal, and it actually was much more cost effective. When you think about a lot of these school buildings having 2 and 3 principals, we're paying administrative salaries for all of these different peoples, would also continue to inflate the budget. So I think that it's important that we really start to look into that, because it's just not cost effective at this point. And once again, another show of waste, right? I also believe that parents, for me, making sure that we're funding programs and organizations that do parent work, because for me, I think a lot of times parents work tirelessly and they don't get paid, but this is their priority, right? And so we need to figure out how do we make sure that we're able to fund some of these programs and some of these parent groups so that they can dedicate their time more to it. Because at the end of the day, parents' voices are what's really important and what really matters. And so those are some things that I would definitely be looking to do.
Thank you. Ms. Hines, you get the final word, and I will mention that right after we hear from Ms. Hines, we will go to closing statements. So Ms. Hines, go right ahead.
I'm totally not in favor of co-locations. And the reason for co-location for me and my site and my children is the fact that it divides children and it separates the parents. And we have enough separation as it is in the US. So why would we go to the lowest level, which is our schools, to start the kids off in separation? So I'm totally against co-locations. Knowledge is power. And the parents, again, I can't stress it enough, that they need to be at the table so that they can make the decision for their children and their schools and their locations. That's why it's going to be important, since we have so many co-locations, is that those schools take priority for the infrastructure to get them on board so that all the kids can feel the same and they can be empowered.
Thank you. Candidates, we're going to just review you by name: Amadou Diallo, Yves Phileas, Althea Stevens, Helen Hines, Michael Belcher, Darlene Jackson, and William Rivera. We thank you for your participation. We could certainly do 5 hours on these issues, and I know it's difficult for each of you to, get a chance to say what you want to say only in 60 seconds. But that's what we've got. So let's go to Mr. Diallo, and you have 60 seconds for your closing statement, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. And I thank all of my colleagues from the 16 that are running with me here and those that are on the 18. And if I'm elected, it is my pleasure to work with you to improve education as an immigrant that have the opportunity to benefit from what this country can offer. I believe it is my sincere duty to do the best I can help uplift the rest of the country as a proud citizen in this country. Thank you very, very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Diallo. Mr. Phileas, your closing statement, sir.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for having me here. Thank you for my colleagues that are here. We are all, even though we're here fighting for one goal, we are here for the common purpose. That's the betterment of not just the district that we're representing, but the community. I'm born and raised in this district. I've risen and grown in it. I call those that are born and raised in the Bronx of Phoenix, because we've literally risen from the ashes and are here to provide anew and start anew. And with my knowledge that I've learned from the Assembly, City Council, citywide, I would love to definitely take that opportunity and grow and learn with us together in this journey. And I believe I'm the best candidate.
Thank you. The next respondent is the third candidate in the 16th Council District, and that would be you, Althea Stevens.
Well, thank you everyone for having me and everyone who showed up today. It was a really good discussion, a lot of great ideas coming out of it. And I'm just really happy to be here. I've been in youth development and organizing for the last 20 years. And to be honest, my run started because young people I worked with and served told me that I should run. I've been an advocate fighter for parents. I'm a parent myself. I've had to, organize my child's school when she was in school, and I've done this work tirelessly. And so I'm excited to get to work with City Council and work with parents and organizations to really make sure that parents are continuously being heard and being seen and moving their work forward. These are our children. And if we're not investing in our children on the front end, that's a problem for me. So for me, I will always be a fighter and stand up for education and young people wherever I go. And anyone who knows me knows that I say that all the time. I'm here for our young people and our parents, and let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to District 17, and the candidate who's representing that district is Helen Hines. Your closing statement, Ms. Hines. I think you may need to unmute. There you go.
Thank you. It is good to see everyone, and I wish all of us well. For the closing statement, I would like to see that our children get the best education they can get. We must remember and reflect that our children is the next generation to move the country forward. It is important that we shine the light on them, give them what they need, let the parents sit at the table, and it's just so much money floating around. Where is the money going for the school system? So there needs to be an overseer that can say what's going on with the money in the schools, and the best person to take part of that process will be the parents. So we need to find out a solution, but I will do everything in my power to make sure that our children have the best education he or she can get. And I thank everyone for listening.
And thank you for your participation. Let's go to the four candidates we have from Council District 18. Up first in a closing statement is Michael Belzer.
Well, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Bronx Parent Leader Advocacy Group, for putting this on. I am a proud public school parent, and I will fight like hell for traditional public schools. I believe we need transformational, radical change in our schools. We need to have culturally responsive education. We need anti-racist education. We need to end the segregations of our schools. We need to make sure that we are really looking at our campuses and making sure they are holistic places of learning, not just for the students, but also for the parents. We need to change our campuses and include things like urban farming, green roofs, and sensory playgrounds. We need to empower our school governance in terms of the parent associations, the CECs, the school leadership teams, and the parent PEP. And we really need to look at how children are getting to school. We need electric buses, we need bike lanes, we need safe routes to school, and we need to look at how we can better manage the streets around our school, because we need to get there. We need our children to stay alive to get to school, to get a better transformation for our future.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think we have I think we have an opportunity to really elect folks who's gonna have the political courage to really invest in our schools who have been most marginalized, especially when it comes to the Bronx. And the things that's about putting the people who are directly impacted, basically just simply listening, making sure that they're at the table, making sure that our teachers and our school administration, has the adequate resources in order for them to be able to thrive, and making sure that we are truly understanding what safe and healthy schools actually looks like without using law enforcement, and really prioritizing health and wellness, addressing our public health crisis when it comes to Black and Brown communities in the Bronx. And so thank you again for having me, and I'm willing to fight tooth and nail. I'm committed then, committed now, and I'm gonna be committed beyond elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And the final word for this segment, for this first half of our program, will go to you, William Rivera.
Thank you, Gary. I just want to say that we're all going to be, one of us are going to be, few of us may be council members in the future, and we have a responsibility and we're held accountable to make our schools better. I don't know the answer to everything. I like to surround my people like on this panel and professionals on how to make our schools better. I look forward to having roundtables and having discussions to parents and students. There are 49 candidates, like you mentioned, running for city council in the Bronx. I hope everybody remembers the ones that are not on this panel, because that's the first step on engaging with parents.
30 seconds.
And also, I will continue to work with the CEC, both of them in my district, with the people on this panel, with the other candidates in the race, with teachers and parents and members of the community board. And thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera, and thanks to all the candidates once again. We'll just list them for the 16th Council District: Amadou Diallo, Eves Phileas, Althea Stevens, Helen Hines in the 17th District, Michael Belzer, Darlene Jackson, and William Rivera in the 18th Council District. People who are watching, we're going to take maybe a minute or two break. We're going to bring in the other 8 candidates, and then we'll go the next round, and you'll get to see more of the people who are seeking your vote. What we're doing is we're doing the Bronx Parent City Council Education Forum, and we will, as I said, take 60 or 120 seconds. And right after that, we'll be back with 8 different candidates. Thank you so much.